Welcome to One on One, the Daily Items weekly digital program featuring Susquehanna Valley newsmakers interviewed by Daily Item reporters. Today's guest is Chris Martine, a biology professor at Bucknell University, interviewed by Justin Strasser.
Sunbury Motors Ford is getting the year off to a fast start. In January, SMC was right on pace to hit their goal of selling 1,000 new Fords in 2019. In February, Sunbury Motors will shift into high gear during its President's Day sales event. Choose from 4 city blocks of new Fords with savings up to 16 grand. Back from over 60 new Ford F-150 4x4s priced as low as $29,934. Deals on new 2019 Ford Fiestas are in overdrive. SMC has them starting at just $12,820, and it gets 35 MPGs. Select from over 45 Ford Escapes, and they're slashed to an amazing price of $17,820. SMC has an incredible deal on a 2018 Ford Fusion, discounted down to $17,770. Sunbury Motors' goal of 1,000 new Fords in 2019 will give all of Central PA the largest discounts on new Fords in recent history. In February, SMC wants to put you into victory lane and become a member of their 1,000 Club of 2019. Sunbury Motors in the North 4th Street Auto Plaza, Sunbury.
Welcome to One on One. I'm Justin Strasser. Today our guest is Chris Martine. He's a biology professor at Bucknell University, a Burpee chair of plant genetics, and the host of a YouTube series called Plants Are Cool Too. Yeah. Thanks for joining us today, Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Justin.
Now, the first thing I wanted to talk to you about before we get into your YouTube series is that there's a winter botany hike coming up this weekend.
That's true.
It's happening on Sunday at 1 in the afternoon. Mm-hmm. Tell us about that. What is that all about?
Yeah, it's through the Merrill Lynn Nature Conservancy, and we're going to meet out at the Dells Ridge Trail, Walker Engle property out there. I think that the idea here is that we're going to go out and walk around a bit in the woods and around the farm property, and we're going to see what's going on. We're actually at a point right now where all of a sudden things are getting really primed for spring. So we'll do a little bit of winter botany, see if we can look for signs of spring, talk a little bit about how the natural world is getting ready for the next season.
Now, when I think of plants, when think of plants and plant hiking and stuff like that, you don't really think of winter.
Yep.
Why? Yep. What did you choose winter for this kind of walk?
Jeff Goodenow contacted me and said he felt like there were enough people around that might be interested in learning some winter biology and winter botany. And there's actually a lot to see this time of year. There are a lot of things sort of get cleared away, and you can look for patterns and other things and see evidence of critters that did things last year, and some of the things are getting warmed up for the spring. So I think we'll see a lot.
Can you give us any examples, a sneak peek? I know you probably want people coming out and hearing it.
Well, and also it's hard to know. We got in just a few days' time, a lot can happen this time of year. Right?
Okay.
So this time of year right now, one of the big things that's happening is skunk cabbage is just beginning to emerge. It's kind of been making its way up, but these little sort of like purplish flower things popping up out of the ground. They can melt the ice and snow and come up really early spring, even mid to late winter. So that's the kind of stuff we're just beginning to see. All the buds are starting to swell up a little bit, getting ready to
skunk cabbage. I think I just saw that on your channel, right?
Yeah,
that's the video. I think that has the most views. I was looking at 23,000.
It is
or
one
something.
of them. Yeah, it is one of the ones with the most
something
views.
About dead zombies or zombie plants. Or
yeah. So the plants, when they do come up, they kind of have this almost rotting flesh garlic mix kind of an odor, and it was a reach for me to say it smells a little bit like zombie flesh, but it did get people to watch the video. So that video is about these plants. It's a fascinating species, really neat local thing.
Tell me a little bit more about those plants.
Yeah, skunk cabbage.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so it's a really cool, unusual species, and especially for something that's right in our own backyard, for us to recognize how neat it is. Like I mentioned, it actually can generate its own body heat, just like we do, that melts the ground around it, and then the plant can basically force its way up through frozen ground, through the ice and the snow, and this time of year begin to make flowers, right, and produce pollen and try to attract pollinators even in this kind of weather. So it's super neat. And once it does that, it then eventually over the summer puts up these big green leaves that look sort of like cabbage, and that's where the name skunk cabbage. We got the smell, and then we got the big cabbage-like leaves.
And now is that up at the Shikellamy Lookout area?
It's a wetland plant, so you're going to find it in sort of like swamps and the edges of streams and creeks. So there are at Chickalemi, there are some lower areas down sort of below the cliffs or in between some of the cliffs where you might get some streams and some things along that edge. One of the best places to see skunk cabbage locally is out at the Turtle Creek area where there used to be the dog walks. All of those wetlands in the back are full of skunk cabbage.
Is that where the hike is going to be this Sunday?
No, the hike on Sunday is out at Dales Ridge, and we're going to walk along the edge of that stream. What's that, East Buffalo Creek?
Okay.
And I'm hoping we see some skunk cabbage coming up along the edge of the water.
Okay. You and I did a lot of stories together the last couple of years, and I think the first one that you and I did together, and I'm going to butcher the name, so you might want to say it. Right. It's called a bush tomato, but what's the scientific name for that?
Well, the group that all these bush tomatoes are in is the genus Solanum. And we had a number of new ones come out in the last couple of years that we discovered and gave names to. So maybe you're talking about Solanum ossicruentum.
Yeah, that's the one.
That one is the one that we had this new species that we discovered in Australia. We knew we needed a new name for it. And then we hooked up with Brad Catherman, the teacher, 7th grade teacher here in Lewisburg. And his students helped us decide on that name. So that was really fun.
Yeah. And then in 2017, it was named one of the top 10 new species of plants ever discovered or something like that.
For the year. So SUNY ESF does a top 10 list each year of the coolest new species of the year, and that made the list in 2017. So pretty cool.
And the fun thing about that is it grows in the Australian outback.
Yep.
And it grows in the greenhouse next to that softball field up at Bucknell.
That's right. 2 places in the world. We're the only ones growing it.
What makes that plant so fascinating?
Yeah, a couple of things. The name ossicruentum translates into bone and bloody. And so when the fruits are immature and you cut them open, they start to turn red and look like they're bleeding. Mm-hmm. But when they fully mature, they're as hard as a bone. And that's the thing that the 7th grade students, who now are, I don't know, they must be 10th or 11th graders at this point since we did that exercise. That's really what they honed in on, where this is just this bloody bone idea, So it's a neat plant.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. Now, before we go take our break, I wanted to ask you about your web series then.
Sure.
It's called Plants Are Cool. Plants Are Cool Too.
That's right.
And you've been doing it for how many years?
Going on a decade, 9 or 10 years at this point since we started making them. Yeah.
Why did you start it? What brought you to do that?
Yeah, so it's a YouTube series about plants. And at the time that I started working on it, I was working a lot with K through 12 students and doing all sorts of outreach and education. And I found that when students were outside, they often knew a lot about animals. And, their answer to how they knew about them was they had seen a lot of sort of media about animals, whether it was Animal Planet or whatever. But there wasn't a lot of dynamic video content out there about plants. So I decided I would try to start producing some of that. And so over the last decade, we've just focused on cool plants and cool plant stories and the interesting scientists who study them. And that's the other part of this, that it's not just about the plants, but it's about scientists who are just people like you and me that are out there discovering new things every day. And what I hope really, like the real inspiration that I hope that comes out of that is that anybody could watch that, including any kid, and say, oh yeah, I could be just like that person, right? I could be a scientist who gets to find things somewhere in the world. Yeah,
and I checked right before we did this interview. You have almost 100,000 views for, I think it was 11 videos.
Yeah, we're there's actually, and I counted the other day too. We're approaching 160,000 total views.
Oh, okay. I must have.
And there's one that's not listed on the channel there, but it's it's gone very well, right? And the thing I am happy about is not every one of those individual clicks on YouTube is representative of just one person watching. I know that all over the country and really all over the world, people are using it in their classrooms, so K through 12, and then lots of people in university settings. So some of those clicks could be 10, 20, even 150 students at a time, and that's the part that I'm really happy about.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to take a break, and we're going to talk some more specifics about Plants Are Cool when we get back.
Sunbury Motors Ford is getting the year off to a fast start. In January, SMC was right on pace to hit their goal of selling 1,000 new Fords in 2019. In February, Sunbury Motors will shift into high gear during its President's Day sales event. Choose from 4 city blocks of new Fords with savings up to $16,000. Back from over 60 new Ford F-150 4x4s priced as low as $29,934. Deals on new 2019 Ford Fiestas are in overdrive. SMC has them starting at just $12,820, and it gets 35 mpgs. Select from over 45 Ford Escapes, and they're slashed to an amazing price of $17,820. SMC has an incredible deal on a 2018 Ford Fusion, discounted down to $17,770. Sunbury Motors' goal of 1,000 new Fords in 2019 will give all of Central PA the largest discounts on new Fords in recent history. In February, SMC wants to put you into victory lane and become a member of their 1,000 Club of 2019. Sunbury Motors in the North 4th Street Auto Plaza, Sunbury.
Welcome back to One-on-One. Again, we're talking with Chris Martine, a biology professor up at Bucknell University. One of the specific episodes I wanted to talk to you about, we did a couple different stories, and again, I'm going to butcher the name, but two rare plants that are found up at the Shikellamy Overlook, the Shikellamy State Park Overlook. Tell me about those.
Yeah, we went out there to make a video about something called Corydalis Aureus. This is a plant that is known from only one place in the entire state of Pennsylvania, and it's the Shikellamy Cliffs. We went there to make a video about the hunt to go find it again and see how many of those plants were there with the Natural Heritage Program people. And while we were there, we actually stumbled upon a population of another very rare plant that was only known before that from the mountains of Virginia and West Virginia. And suddenly there it was. And we actually didn't know what we had found when we initially found it either. Right?
What makes, we'll go with the first one, what makes that one so rare that it seems to only grow there?
Yeah, it's sort of
known to grow there.
Both of these are similar stories. That Corydalis is widespread to the west of Pennsylvania. It's kind of, in some states, super abundant. But in Pennsylvania, it's sort of on the edge of that range, and something about that cliff face is specific to its desires and its requirements. And so it only lives there, right? But even though it's much more common to the west. This other plant, this thing called Heuchera alba, or the white alum root, is more of a southern plant, as I mentioned. So it sort of reaches the northern extent of its range up on these cliff faces. And we were really surprised to find it there.
So how did you know they were there in the first place? Or the first one? How did you know the first one was there?
The first one had been recorded by the Natural Heritage Program, and then the Merrill Lynn Conservancy folks had been kind of monitoring it. Right? They just recently purchased a big block of land upstream from the park and then added it to the state park. So they had been monitoring that and a couple of other cool plants on those cliffs. The Heuchera alba, we didn't know until I tweeted a picture of it and called it the wrong name.
That's right.
And then the expert in the group, who's at the University of Florida, corrected me, and that's the moment where we realized we had made this other really cool discovery while filming.
All these connections that you just put it out there in the world and in the ether, and then somebody else is like, well, wait a minute. I don't think you're think you're saying the right thing for that one.
That's one of the most amazing things about science right now, is that everybody's sort of out there and connected, and you can put stuff out into the world, and people will respond to it. It's sort of the magic of being able to use social media for good in a lot of ways.
Well, one of the things we mentioned in that article before is that people were misidentifying that plant for years and years. When something like that comes up, how do other botanists feel? Do you feel like they're stepping on your toes? Is it sort of like a how dare you sort of situation?
Yeah, I mean, it would be easy for me to be mad that this guy called me out and told me but I was psyched, because this plant is actually pretty difficult to identify, and that had been the case for about a century. In fact, the earliest collection of that species in that area around Shikellamy had been made in around 1905 by students at Bucknell, and we had a collection. We had that very collection on campus in our herbarium, and I only realized what it was after being told on Twitter that I needed to look with different eyes. Right? That's a lot of it. It's like nobody thought it should be there, so nobody thought it would be there. Right?
That's funny. So you also featured the Anthracite outdoor adventure area in one of your videos. Yep. And for anybody who out there might not know what that is, that's the recreational park out in Cole Township, Shamokin area. So tell me about what caught your attention at that park.
Yeah, the one of the reasons I wanted to focus on that for one of our episodes is up till then our episodes always featured a scientist or a couple of scientists and their work, and this is a different kind of story. These are the folks that are sort of running AOAA and have put a lot of their time into it and are restoring the forest out there. are not scientists, right? They're just people who care about the local environment and having habitat out there. And so that was really inspiring to me. The other part of it was that they're not just trying to get forests back on old coal lands, but they're also trying to put American chestnuts back on it. And the American chestnut went almost extinct about a century ago, and now we have these hybrids that are disease resistant that are grown and are able to be put back out on the landscape. And some of the restoration out there includes those. So those things sort of got me excited about it. But I think the biggest thing was that I wanted to show that there's these two communities of people that might be seen as being sort of on opposite sides of the issue around conservation, right? Recreational riders and and biodiversity scientists, tree hugger types like me, right? You might say. But here's a way that we're actually coming together, and we're both interested in the same thing in that regard, right? Growing forests so we have a place to go and be around trees and be under the shade of canopies, right? And so I wanted to show that too, and I think that place really exemplifies that sort of overlap in interests and things that we can really come together on.
And reclaim mine land and whatnot.
Right.
There's a couple coal mining companies out there. Last year I went to visit, and they talked about the conservation, about how this area we've reclaimed. We put the trees back on, and theirs are growing up. So, so that's kind of a neat idea of those two. Environmentalists versus ATV riders coming together and
caring about
that's a
similar
beautiful
stuff.
That's beautiful land out there. And,
it is
and lots and lots of
gorgeous.
trees and plant life.
It's really exciting. I'm going to go out with the Line Mountain Elementary third graders in May, and they're going to take out a bus. I'm going to meet them out there at AOA, and we're going to talk about that forest and what it means to regrow a forest. I'm psyched about that. I think it's a great place to learn about stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll enjoy that.
Yep.
So you dabble a little bit in the local comedy scene. Saw you out there telling some jokes and some funny stories. How did that ever pop up on your radar?
Yeah, I did a one-time comedy appearance a few weeks ago, and you were there too. I actually thought coming in here today this might just be a roast. Apparently you're a good roast.
That's what I hear.
And Billy Kelly has been helping to run these comedy nights for a long time, and he's always said, come on out. And I thought, I'm going to come out for this time because it was at the Cider Bar with Rob Antonitis on his birthday, and it was an opportunity for me to tell some funny stories and give that a whirl. So I don't know that I'm going to do a lot of comedy, but I do like to talk to people. I do like to tell stories, and I think that as a scientist, it's one of those things that I shouldn't be afraid to do. Right? I think it makes sense to get out there and tell more people about science and the discoveries we make every day, and if it's a comedy night or if it's giving a talk or doing storytelling or something, I think I'm happy to do it.
So is the story that you told there, is that all true?
Yes, I did tell a story about how about how I wondered if you could grow watermelon seeds after they go through your digestive system, and that's the story I told. But we don't have to go into too many more details.
That's fine.
Kids do crazy things, Justin.
So, as a botanist, do you have a favorite plant, or is that sort of like asking a parent if they have a favorite child?
Yeah, it kind of is. It's difficult, and it's almost unfair because of the like I mentioned before, we're sort of in the business of finding and describing new species, right? So it's hard to not just choose one of those because we sort of went out there and went on an expedition in the Australian outback and found, for instance, Solanum ossiculentum or some of these other ones. Right now, I think my favorite is the new species that we're about to publish. So we just sent out a new species, also from Australia, that we're calling Solanum plastisexum.
Okay.
And that's a paper that's going to come out within the next month or two. And it's another really cool bush tomato. These things are like wild eggplants, basically. And this is one we have coming out really soon.
What makes that one interesting, or don't you want to talk about that?
Well, no, I'll tell you. We named it plastisexum because it's really hard to figure out what it's doing in terms of its reproduction. Right? So, what many people may not realize is that most of the time plants are always doing both male and female stuff at the same time. Every flower makes pollen, which is male. Every flower can make seeds, which is female. And so they're doing both things kind of all the time. But if you really begin to look at plants, there's all these variations on that are really unusual and really crazy. And this species kind of does almost everything a plant can do. It kind of does male stuff, it does female stuff, it does both things at the same time. And the fact that it kind of never does one thing very consistently has meant that every time botanists have found it over the last 40 or 50 years, they couldn't figure out who it was or what it was up to. And so what we have realized now, in part by doing DNA studies, is we have figured out that all this confusion leads us to the fact that it's one species that needed a name and needed to be described. And that's the story that's coming out.
I'm excited to learn more about that when you get that published. So with your series of Plants Are Cool Too, you haven't had an episode up in a while, but you said that you're going to be going to Hawaii and filming an episode there.
Yeah, that's right. We're on our way to Hawaii in the middle of March, myself and my crew, Paul Frederick and Tim Kramer. And we are meeting a group of 6 scientists on the island of Kauai. And they are studying some really cool plants out there. A number of them are pollinated in the middle of the night out on this island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean by moths. And one of the things we're trying to do is try to catch the moths doing it. They've never been shot on video doing the pollination. And so one of our goals is to try to see this happening. And, it's kind of a cool story because Hawaii is just full of really rare things. It's got the highest rate of endangered species and species at risk of extinction in all of the U.S. states. And some of these species are similar, right? And so you've got these cool flowers on this one island that need this certain pollinator on certain kinds of nights, and we're going to go try to track down the whole relationship and see what it looks like. So that's one of probably 2 or 3 videos we'll shoot while we're out there.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Chris, thanks for joining us and teaching us a little bit about plants.
Yeah, sure thing. Yeah.
Thank you for watching this week's One-on-One. We hope you'll join us next Thursday for a new installment.